The real suspect scrambled up and vanished into the crowd. But when the police arrived moments later, they saw only Issa on the ground, confused and wide-eyed. He didn't run, he didn't speak, he just froze. To them, that looked guilty. They shouted commands. "Get on the ground! Show me your hands!" Issa is 37 years old. He's tall, good-looking, with quiet eyes and a peaceful face. He doesn't speak, not because he won't, but because he can't. Issa is autistic, and his silence is part of who he is. But those who know him best say he's one of the gentlest souls they've ever met. Issa was born in Amman, Jordan. His mother was Jordanian, a woman of deep Christian faith and resilience. His father, a born-again Christian American, was working overseas when they met. Issa was their only son, and from the start they knew he was different. Delayed speech, sensitive to loud sounds, a unique way of seeing the world. But he smiled, he laughed, and he loved music. His parents loved him fiercely. At age 7, Issa and his family moved permanently to the United States. His father filed all the right paperwork, and Issa was issued a U.S. passport. He became a citizen through his father. His entire life from that point forward was in America. The schools that struggled to understand him, the local parks where he walked daily, the group homes that cared for him with quiet kindness. America was his home. He never went back to Jordan. Not once. Not for a visit. He couldn't remember much of it anyway. Just flashes of childhood, smells of spices in the air, and his grandmother's voice. But one day, that life came crashing down. Issa was spending the afternoon with his mother at the mall. It was one of their small routines. She liked to walk with him, arm in arm, pointing out decorations or small things that made him smile. Issa didn't speak, but he listened closely. He always felt safest when she was near. That day, she stopped to use the restroom. She asked him to sit on a bench just outside the entrance, where he always waited patiently. Issa nodded as he often did and sat quietly, hands folded, rocking gently in rhythm with the sounds of the mall. But in the span of those few minutes, everything changed. A man was running, fast. Shouts echoed behind him. Security guards chased close behind. The man rounded a corner and crashed into Issa, who had just stood up, startled by the noise. They both fell to the floor. The real suspect scrambled up and vanished into the crowd. But when the police arrived moments later, they saw only Issa on the ground, confused and wide-eyed. He didn't run, he didn't speak, he just froze. To them, that looked guilty. They shouted commands. "Get on the ground! Show me your hands!" But Issa didn't respond, not because he refused. He simply didn't process it. The noise, the lights, the tension, it overwhelmed him. He shut down. They tackled him. When Issa's mother stepped out of the restroom, the bench where she had left her son just minutes earlier was empty. At first, she wasn't alarmed. Maybe he had wandered a few steps. Maybe he was looking at something nearby. She called his name gently, then louder. She checked around the food court. Nothing. Then the panic hit. She started shouting, running in circles, calling for security. Shoppers stared. She didn't care. "Have you seen my son? Tall, quiet, autistic. He doesn't speak." She called her husband, breathless, shaking. Within minutes, he arrived and joined the search. Together, they scoured every hallway, every restroom, every store. They begged mall employees to check cameras. Finally, they reached the mall security office. The staff hesitated, then admitted that someone had been arrested earlier near the restroom wing. A man in a dark hoodie, matching Issa's description. But they weren't sure. The police had taken him hours ago. "Arrested?" his mother gasped. My son doesn't talk. He didn't do anything. Where did they take him?" But no one had a clear answer. They were told to try the city jail, then redirected to the sheriff's substation. No one could confirm anything. Hours passed. The parents kept calling, kept asking, kept hoping this was all a mistake. And it was. A terrible, devastating mistake. Meanwhile, Issa sat alone in a small, cold jail cell. No one explained anything. The fluorescent lights buzzed above him. The echo of metal doors slamming shut filled the air. Every noise startled him. Officers tried to question him. "What's your name? Where are you from? Why were you resisting arrest?" Issa didn't respond. He couldn't. He sat silently, hands folded in his lap, eyes wide. His breathing was shallow. He rocked slightly, overwhelmed by fear and sensory overload. They searched his pockets. No ID. The wallet he had was left in his mom's purse. One officer scanned his fingerprint record, but no name, and only said, "A foreign place of birth, Amman, Jordan," popped up in the system. Another officer made a call. ICE got involved. They entered the room like they were hunting someone dangerous. "Tell us your name. Say something," they demanded. "What's your immigration status? Why are you in this country?" Issa said nothing. He didn't even look up. He couldn't. To them, it was non-compliance, refusal to cooperate. They labeled him high risk and uncooperative. Hours later, ICE placed him in shackles and walked him to a white van. He didn't resist. He just went silent like he always had.
Thank you for watching. Part 2 will start in a few seconds. You'll appreciate if you support the channel by liking and sharing, and make sure you subscribe. Thank you so much.
Back at home, his parents still didn't know where he was. Their son had vanished. No official had called. No one gave a straight answer. Inside the ICE holding facility, the processing was routine, cold, mechanical. Issa sat with his head down while agents filled out forms, typed into terminals, and checked boxes that would decide his fate. But there was a problem. He didn't speak. Not a single word. One agent leaned over to another. "What's his name again?" "No ID, no answer, nothing. So what do we call him?" Another agent, young and smirking, said, "I don't know. Just put John Doe or Habibi Doe or something. That's what they all call each other anyway." The others chuckles, and that was it. Instead of John Doe, they labeled him Habibi Doe, a cruel nickname born from ignorance and arrogance, not understanding or care. It became the name printed on his file, his travel documents, and the digital case notes. To the system, Issa wasn't a person. He was paperwork. Silence. An inconvenience to be processed and moved out. No one asked why he didn't speak. No one stopped to consider that maybe he couldn't. No one called an advocate, an interpreter, or a medical professional. He was foreign-born. He didn't answer. That was enough. And with the flick of a pen and a careless chuckles laugh, the government stripped a man of his name and his country. Outside those walls, Issa's parents were in full panic mode. His mother couldn't sleep. His father was on the phone with every agency he could find, repeating the same sentence over and over, frustrated. "My son is a U.S. citizen. His name is Issa Michael Thomas. He has autism. He can't speak. He was born in Jordan, but raised here since he was 7. But by the time anyone took them seriously, the ICE van had already driven off. Destination, deportation, and Habibi Doe was on the manifest. Back in California, Issa's parents were growing frantic. They had gone from police station to jail to ICE headquarters, all in the same day. No one had answers. No one could confirm if Issa was in custody, or even if he'd been arrested. They searched databases, called detention centers, spoke to supervisors. Each time they gave his full legal name, Issa Michael Thomas. Each time the answer was the same. We have no one in custody by that name." His mother wept in the hallway of the Icefield office, clutching his birth certificate and passport. "He is my son! He's American! He doesn't speak! Please, just check again. His name is Issa Thomas." A clerk said, "Ma'am, we've searched. There's no record under that name. If you find a case number, we can try again." "But how can we find a case number if no one will tell us where he is?" her husband snapped, exhausted, eyes bloodshot from driving and pleading for 18 straight hours. They even contacted a local congressman's office. A staffer promised to look into it. But every system hit the same wall. No record of Issa Thomas, because he had been logged under a different name, one made up by someone who couldn't be bothered to care. Meanwhile, Issa was placed in a deportation staging center in the Mojave Desert, still silent, still alone. No lawyer, no phone call, no medical screening. He ate the food placed in front of him. He never spoke. He didn't cause trouble. To the staff, that made him easy to forget. His file stamped "Final Removal Order," voluntary non-responsive, was rushed through, and on the manifest, next to the line marked name, it didn't say Issa. It didn't say Thomas. It said Habibi Doe. The plane sat on the tarmac under the gray light of early morning. A handful of ICE officers escorted several individuals up the boarding ramp, shackled, silent, most with nothing but a small bag and the clothes on their backs. Among them was Issa, still silent, still labeled Habibi Doe. He didn't understand what was happening. No one had explained, no one had asked. His hands were cuffed loosely in front of him, his legs bound with soft restraints. He didn't resist, he didn't even blink. His eyes stared ahead, empty and overwhelmed. The agents placed him in a window seat near the rear of the aircraft. They didn't speak to him. One officer looked down and muttered, "Flight to Amman. Hope you speak Arabic, buddy." Issa didn't respond. He hadn't said a single word since the day he was arrested. Because he couldn't. Back in California, his mother jolted awake just before sunrise. She had fallen asleep with her shoes on, her phone still clutched in her hand. Her husband had stayed up all night, calling detention centers, congressional aides, even a civil rights attorney who promised to investigate further. 3 days had passed. Issa's room was exactly the same. His blanket still folded on the bed, headphones still resting on the nightstand. His favorite soft hoodie draped over the chair. His mother sat on the edge of the bed, holding a photo of him as a child. She ran her thumb across the image, whispering a prayer. No one knew where he was. Not her, not her husband, not the attorney they hired, not even the congressman's office that had promised to look into it. Every database said the same thing. No record found. No one by the name Issa Michael Thomas is currently in our custody. They asked if anyone matching his description had been transferred. No one we can confirm. They even called the airport. There are no public records for deportation flights. They called the embassy in Jordan. We haven't received any official transfer requests or notifications for a U.S. citizen named Issa Thomas. And that was the nightmare. Because no one was looking for Habibi Doe. Issa had been disappeared by a typo and a smirk, vanished into a system that didn't track mistakes, didn't issue corrections, and didn't care if you had a voice, especially if you couldn't use it. His parents spent every day calling hospitals in Amman. No sign. They called local shelters, churches, refugee aid centers. No luck. They even posted his photo online, begging people in Jordan to keep an eye out. "He doesn't speak. He may be scared. Please help." The post went viral in small corners of the internet, but still, nothing. The world had moved on. But for Issa's parents, every hour was agony. Every knock on the door might be news. Every phone ring might be a lead. Every moment without him was torture. And somewhere, on the other side of the world, their son was alone, nameless, stateless, forgotten, but not by them. The plane landed at Queen Alia International Airport just after dusk. The lights of Amman twinkled in the distance, but for Issa, the descent was just noise and vibration. He stared out the window, unmoving, eyes wide but distant. He had no idea where he was. No one had told him. He hadn't eaten since the day before. A government agent stood beside him. "Get up. You're home." Issa didn't move. The agent pulled him by the arm and led him down the stairs of the aircraft, toward a side gate. No one else used it. It was the entrance reserved for deportees, a back door to a country that had long since forgotten him. A Jordanian officer stood at the gate, arms folded, disinterested. Another leaned against the wall, puffing a cigarette. They looked at the papers handed over by ICE with the name Habibi Doe typed in bold across the top.
مين هذا الزلمة؟ إيه.
"Who is this?" the Jordanian officer asked flatly in Arabic. "Deportee. Born here. Yours now," the American officer replied. "He doesn't talk?" "Nope. Not a word." The Jordanian officer waved him off. "Throw him out. I'm not babysitting another mute." With a shrug, the agents walked Issa to the outer gate, uncuffed him, and pushed him through the metal detector. No one explained anything. No welcome. No help. No file transfer. No handoff to social services. Just a quiet shove through a steel door. And then they left. Issa stood on the curb of a foreign airport. Alone. No luggage. No wallet. No phone. No name anyone recognized. The warm night air carried the smells of dust, exhaust, and street food, but nothing familiar. People hurried past him. Taxi drivers shouted offers to travelers. Children pulled their parents' hands. Airport guards barked at loiterers to move along. And Issa stood still, like a forgotten suitcase. No one helped. No one stopped. No one cared. He sat on the sidewalk as the sky grew dark. His hands shook. His legs curled up to his chest. He rocked gently, humming the same soft tone he used to sing when anxious. A tune only his mother recognized. He didn't know where to go. He didn't even know where he was. It was nearly 10 p.m. when Ahmed pulled his taxi up to the far corner of the airport lot. He had been driving since morning. Long hours, bad tips, and aching legs. But he needed the extra cash. His youngest daughter had outgrown her shoes again, and school started in 2 weeks. As he leaned against the side of his cab, sipping tea from a worn thermos, he noticed something unusual in the shadows near the terminal wall. A man, alone, sitting cross-legged on the pavement, still. Ahmed, squinted. The man wasn't panhandling. He wasn't moving. He wasn't sleeping. He was just there. Ahmed approached slowly, his instincts both cautious and curious. "Salam alaikum," he said gently. No answer. The man, Issa, looked up at him with wide eyes, but didn't speak. He rocked slightly, his hands balled into fists in his lap. Ahmed crouched down, thoughtful. "You okay, brother?" he asked in Arabic. "Are you lost? Do you need help?" Still nothing. He tried again in English, concerned. "You need ride? You hungry?" Issa didn't respond, but his eyes welled with something. Not fear, not hope, but deep confusion. That's when Ahmed noticed. No luggage, no phone, no documents, and no shoes. Just a worn pair of socks, covered in airport dust. Ahmed stood up, glanced around, then made a decision. He opened his passenger door and motioned gently, softly. "Come. Just sit. No charge. Safe." Issa didn't move at first, but after a moment he slowly stood up, legs weak, and stepped toward the cab. He ducked his head inside, settled into the seat, and stared straight ahead. Ahmed turned the heater on low, the night air had a chill, and drove off slowly. He didn't know who this man was, but something in his heart told him, This man doesn't belong on the street. This man needs someone to care. And so, he drove. Not to a hotel, not to a shelter, but to his own home. As Ahmed drove through the quiet streets of Amman, he kept glancing at the silent man in his passenger seat. There was something hauntingly familiar about him. The shape of his face, the stillness in his eyes, the way he sat, tense, but not threatening, lost, but not angry. It hit Ahmed like a soft blow to the chest. He looked just like his younger brother, Samir. Samir had passed away 15 years earlier, after a long illness. He had been quiet, too, gentle. He rarely spoke, even before the sickness took over. But he had a smile that could light up a room when he let it through. Ahmed felt his throat tighten. He hadn't thought about Samir in years. Not like this, not in the way that makes your chest ache with memory. He took a deep breath and whispered, more to himself than to Issa, "Ya Allah, it's like you sent me my brother back tonight." Issa didn't answer. But in that moment, under the soft light of the dashboard, Ahmed saw something flicker in his eyes. Maybe recognition, maybe peace, or maybe it was just the reflection of someone finally being seen. Ahmed pulled into the narrow driveway of his modest home on the city's edge. His wife peeked through the window as he opened the passenger door. Inside, Ahmed gave Issa a warm meal. Just rice and lentils, with flatbread and tea. Issa didn't say a word, but he ate, slowly, carefully. Then, exhausted beyond words, he fell asleep on the couch, curled into himself, like a child. Ahmed covered him with a soft blanket, the same one his brother used to use, and sat nearby in silence. That night, as Ahmed prayed, he wept softly, not just for Issa, but for Samir, and for the chance to do something right, something good, for someone who the world had thrown away. He didn't know who Issa was, but he knew what he was now: family. Morning sunlight crept through the curtains as birds chirped faintly outside Ahmed's small house. The air was cool, peaceful. Issa sat at the kitchen table, barefoot, wearing a clean t-shirt Ahmed had given him. He didn't say a word. He just stared softly at the steam rising from a cup of warm tea in front of him. Ahmed moved slowly, making breakfast. Eggs, fresh bread, and olive oil with za'atar. Simple, familiar, comforting. He placed a plate in front of Issa, then sat across from him. Still no words from Issa, but Ahmed wasn't in a hurry. He looked at the man before him and gently said, "You remind me of someone I loved very much." He paused, tapping his chest softly. "My brother, Samir." Issa didn't look up. Ahmed continued, his voice low and steady, almost like a prayer. He was quiet too, kind eyes. He never had to speak much for us to understand him. He smiled gently, his eyes misting. Sometimes I think Allah puts people in our path to help us heal something we didn't know was still broken. Issa's fingers moved across the edge of the table, slowly tracing invisible lines. Ahmed watched him, then added softly, "I don't know your story. I don't know your name. But I feel like you didn't land in front of me by accident." Issa blinked. Then, for the first time, he looked directly at Ahmed. Just for a moment. And in that moment, Ahmed knew. This man, silent as he was, understood. Maybe not the words, but the feeling, the trust, the care, the quiet bond between two souls who knew loss, and the strange grace of being found again. Ahmed stood quietly in the hallway as his wife, Layla, folded laundry on the couch. She looked up at him, then past him toward the kitchen, where Issa sat silently eating. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Ahmed, who is he? Why did you bring him home?" Ahmed walked over, sat beside her, and took her hand. "I don't know his name," he said honestly. "He didn't say a word. Not one." Layla tilted her head slightly. "So you brought home a stranger?" He nodded. "Yes, a stranger to us, but not to Allah." She looked uncertain. Ahmed turned toward the kitchen and then back to her. His voice grew steady, calm. "Do you remember my brother Samir?" She nodded. Of course she did. He looked just like him. I saw him sitting on the sidewalk at the airport, barefoot, alone, not begging, not moving, just still, like someone the world forgot. He paused, gathering the emotion rising in his throat. I asked him if he needed help. He didn't answer, but something in me knew I couldn't leave him there, not him, not tonight. Layla was silent for a moment. Then Ahmed said something she had heard him say only a few times in their marriage, and always with weight behind it. He is Miskeen. The word echoed softly in the room. Miskeen, the one who is poor, vulnerable, in need, not just of money, but of mercy. Our Prophet taught us, Ahmed continued, to feed the Miskeen, to shelter the orphan, to care for the traveler who has no road. He's all three. Layla looked down, then back at the kitchen. Issa had finished his tea and was gently stacking his dishes, neat, careful, respectful. Ahmed placed his hand on her shoulder. "He's our guest now. However long Allah wills, we help him, as much as we can." Layla nodded slowly, her heart catching up to her faith. "Then we will do it," she said, "for Allah's sake." Later that evening, as Layla cleaned the dinner plates and Ahmed dried them beside her, she looked over at him and asked softly, "Habibi, what is he going to do during the day, when you're driving, when I'm at work?" Ahmed didn't even pause. "He comes with me," he said, matter of fact. "With you?" "In the front seat, like my co-pilot." Layla raised an eyebrow, drying her hands. "You sure about that? What if he gets overwhelmed? What if someone says something?" Ahmed smiled. "I'll handle it. He's quiet, calm, and I think being with me will help him feel safe, better than leaving him here alone all day." He walked over to the living room, where Issa sat cross-legged on a floor cushion, gently flipping through a magazine. Not reading, just looking. Ahmed looked at him and said, "Thoughtful, you ride with me tomorrow, okay?" Issa didn't speak, but after a few seconds, he nodded once. Layla watched the exchange from the doorway, her heart softening again. "You really believe Allah sent him to us?" Ahmed didn't look away from Issa as he answered, "I don't believe it, Layla. Whew, I know it." That night, the house was quiet. Issa lay peacefully on the small mattress Ahmed had set up in the corner of the living room. A soft blanket covered him. His hands were gently tucked beneath his cheek. He breathed slowly, like a child finally safe from the storm. In the bedroom, Layla and Ahmed lay in bed, whispering in the dark. Layla's voice was soft. "He still hasn't told us his name." Ahmed nodded against the pillow. "No, and maybe he doesn't know how." They both fell silent for a moment. Then Layla whispered, "We can't keep calling him he forever." "I know," Ahmed replied. Layla smiled faintly in the dark. "You remember what the ICE agents called him?" Ahmed let out a tired sigh. "Yes. Habibi Doe. I saw a ripped paper name tag. Like a joke, like he was nothing. They meant it to mock him," she said, "but Habibi means my love." Ahmed turned toward her. Layla continued, "Maybe that's what he needs most. Not a full name, not a government file, just love." They lay in silence again, the weight of the moment washing over them. Then Ahmed whispered, almost to himself, "Habibi, it suits him." Layla smiled, her eyes already closing. "Then that's who he is, until Allah gives us more." In the other room, the man once known to ICE as Habibi Doe slept soundly, unaware that, in this home, his name had just been redeemed. Not as a number, not as a case file, not as a problem, but as Habibi, the beloved.
The next morning, just after sunrise, Issa climbed into the front seat of Ahmed's taxi. No words were exchanged. But when the engines started and the road opened before them, Ahmed glanced sideways and smiled. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone on the morning drive. And neither did Issa. Ahmed stepped out of the mosque after Fajr prayer, the rising sun casting gold across the quiet streets of Amman. As he approached his taxi, he saw Habibi already waiting in the front seat. Buckled in, hands folded, quietly watching the pigeons flutter nearby. "Ready?" Ahmed asked. Habibi nodded once. As they drove, Ahmed kept glancing at him, not out of worry, but wonder. This quiet man had no name, no voice, no papers, but there was something unmistakably noble in him, dignity in the way he carried himself, calmness in the way he sat, a depth that said, "There's more here than meets the eye." That afternoon, during their lunch break, they parked beneath a tree overlooking the old hills outside the city. Ahmed passed Habibi a sandwich and a bottle of water. Then he asked softly, "Where are you from?" He didn't expect an answer, but for the first time, Habibi pointed. Not at the sandwich, not at the taxi, but at himself. Then slowly, he used both hands to draw the shape of a cross over his chest. Ahmed blinked, surprised. Not offended, just surprised. "You're Christian?" he asked. Habibi nodded. Ahmed nodded back, slowly, respectfully. "Alhamdulillah, that explains a few things." Then he smiled gently. "My brother Samir had a Christian friend growing up. They used to read each other's books. One day he came home and said, 'The Christians pray with their eyes open.' I told him, maybe they just want to keep an eye on God in case he walks by." Habibi smiled faintly, the first real smile since Ahmed had met him. Ahmed laughed. Not loud, just enough to feel the warmth. "No matter how we pray," he said, "the important thing is we believe there's someone listening." And in that moment, one Christian, one Muslim, one taxi in the middle of a desert hill, two strangers became family, not because of religion, but because of compassion. Days passed. Ahmed and Habibi fell into a quiet rhythm. Each morning they rose early, prayed in their own ways, then drove through the winding streets of Amman, picking up passengers, dropping off schoolchildren, delivering groceries, offering rides to the old and tired. Habibi never spoke, never wrote, never told Ahmed where he was from, who he was, or what had happened. He didn't show fear, but he didn't show trust either, just presence. Quiet, still, breathing presence. One afternoon, as they sat eating falafel under a patch of shade, Ahmed tried again. He wasn't pushing, just hoping. "Your name," he said, gently tapping his own chest. "My name is Ahmed," he pointed to Habibi. "You?" Habibi blinked. No response. Ahmed tried showing a phone screen with letters. He even offered him a pen and paper. Nothing. Not confusion, just stillness, like something deep inside Issa had shut itself off a long time ago and hadn't reopened. That night, as Ahmed sat on the roof sipping tea, Layla joined him. "Any luck today?" she asked. He shook his head. "Nothing. He understands, but he doesn't give anything." Layla rested her head on his shoulder. "Maybe he doesn't remember." "Or maybe," Ahmed whispered, "he remembers everything, and it hurts too much." They sat in silence, the night wind brushing softly against them. In the living room, Habibi sat cross-legged on the carpet, gently running his fingers across the edge of a cushion. The call to prayer echoed faintly in the distance. He didn't know what was coming next. He didn't know how long he'd be here. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't scared. Each day, Ahmed talked, not to fill silence, but to give it meaning. As they drove through the heart of Amman, Ahmed would gesture out the window, pointing to old Roman ruins, the winding souks, the bustling cafes. "You see that mosque over there?" he said one afternoon. "That's King Abdullah Mosque, one of the most beautiful in the city. But you know what I love more? Right across the street there's a church. They've been neighbors for decades, no fighting, no walls, just neighbors." Habibi looked out the window. Calm, present, listening. Ahmed smiled to himself. "We are not a perfect country," he said, "but we know how to live next to each other. Muslim, Christian, it doesn't matter, as long as you respect the soul." Another day, while passing a vendor selling dates and figs, Ahmed said, "You know what I love about Jordan? We don't rush everything. We sit. We drink tea. We ask people how they're doing and actually wait for the answer." He glanced at Habibi, who was watching the vendor pack figs into a brown paper bag. "You feel it, don't you?" Ahmed asked. Habibi turned and looked directly at him. No smile, no words. But his eyes said yes. Each day Ahmed talked, not to fill silence, but to give it meaning. At night, while sipping tea on the small balcony of their home, Ahmed would continue. Sometimes he told Habibi stories about growing up in Zaka. Other times he spoke of dreams he had, dreams he never followed, like opening a bookstore or learning to play the oud. He laughed. "Now look at me, just a taxi driver talking to a quiet man who doesn't say a word. But this is good. This is peace." Habibi didn't answer, but he was there. Every word he heard, every story he received. And slowly, without a single sentence exchanged, something unspoken grew between them. Trust. By now, Habibi rode with Ahmed every day, same front seat, same calm posture, same quiet eyes watching the world pass by. He still never spoke, but something in his presence made people pause. Maybe it was the way he listened, fully, gently, like someone who carried no weapons, no judgment, and no rush. One afternoon, Ahmed picked up a young couple in their 20s, stressed, clearly in the middle of an argument. As they got in, Ahmed smiled and said in Arabic, "Welcome, I'm Ahmed. This is my brother Habibi." The couple glanced at him confused. Ahmed grinned. "Don't be shy. You can talk freely in this cab. Habibi is the best listener in Amman. You can tell him anything. He won't judge. He won't interrupt. He'll just sit with you in it." The couple chuckled, and tension slowly melted as the ride went on. By the time they were dropped off, they were holding hands again. Another day, an older woman got in the back seat, sighing with exhaustion. Ahmed greeted her the same way. "This is my brother Habibi. You know, if you need to vent, go ahead. He's heard everything from politics to heartbreak, and he keeps every secret." She laughed at first, then 20 minutes into the ride, she began to cry. Her husband had died 6 months ago. Her children had moved abroad. The loneliness was crushing. She hadn't told anyone until that day in the back seat of a taxi with a stranger who didn't speak. She gently touched Habibi's shoulder and said, "Thank you for listening." Habibi gave a small nod, and in that nod she found more comfort than in 1,000 words. Ahmed never corrected anyone. He introduced Habibi as his brother, because he was, maybe not by blood, but by fate, by kindness, by something greater. And though Habibi still had no voice, his silence had become a gift, a sacred space, where people were seen, heard, and accepted, often for the first time in a long time. It had been nearly 4 months since Habibi began riding in Ahmed's taxi, 4 months of quiet drives, of Arabic songs from the past, of shared meals, small gestures, and one-sided conversations that somehow still felt complete. He still hadn't said a single word, not one, until that day. The afternoon sun poured through the windshield as Ahmed pulled up to Queen Alia International Airport to pick up 2 American passengers, a man and a woman, probably in their 30s, wearing backpacks and wide smiles. They greeted Ahmed cheerfully, happy to be visiting Jordan for the first time. As the ride began, the woman in the back seat asked, "Do you mind if we play something in English, just to keep us awake? It's a long drive." Ahmed nodded with a smile. "Of course. I'll find something for you." He switched the station from his usual mix of Fairuz and Arabic classics to a local frequency that played Western hits. The taxi rolled onto the freeway. The static cleared. And then the radio began to play. Bruno Mars. A simple love song from the 2010s. A song that had played on radios, weddings, and school dances across the country for years. Ahmed didn't think much of it. But then, without warning, a voice came from the passenger seat. Soft, clear, melodic. "When I see your face, there's not a thing that I would change." It was Habibi, singing, out loud, eyes closed, every word on pitch. The 2 Americans looked at each other in awe. "Whoa, he can sing? His voice is beautiful." Ahmed's hands froze on the steering wheel. He didn't say a word. He couldn't. His throat was tight. His eyes burned. He looked at the man beside him, the one who had sat silent for months, who hadn't even whispered his name, now singing freely, effortlessly, like a dam had broken and something sacred was pouring out. "Habibi," he said quietly, barely able to speak. You spoke." Habibi opened his eyes, looked at him, and smiled. A real smile, full of light, full of peace. And in that moment, Ahmed no longer saw a stranger. He saw the return of a soul. Not a ghost of someone lost, but the beginning of someone coming back. The road to the resort was long and winding, and after Habibi's voice filled the cab, the rest of a drive was wrapped in silence. But not the usual kind. This silence glowed. The 2 American passengers kept whispering to each other in the back seat, sneaking glances at Habibi, like they had just witnessed a miracle. As they reached their destination, the woman leaned forward and said, "You have an incredible gift. Don't stop singing, okay?" Habibi didn't respond, just a small nod. She smiled and waved as she got out. "Take care of him," she told Ahmed. Ahmed smiled, eyes still glassy. "I will, always." As the taxi pulled away from the drop-off, the golden hour sun spilled across the dashboard. Ahmed looked over, his heart still pounding. He wanted to speak. He had to. "Habibi, that song," he said, voice hushed. "You sang. You really sang." He smiled, waiting, hoping. "You remember that, don't you, from America?" No response. "Bruno Mars, huh? You like him?" Still silence. Ahmed pressed gently. "What's your name? Can you tell me now?" Habibi turned his head slowly toward the window. No words, no nod, just gone again, like a curtain had fallen. Ahmed's heart sank, but he didn't push. He just nodded quietly, hands returning to the wheel. "Okay, Habibi," he whispered. "I'm still here. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here." The drive home was quiet, but not hopeless, because even if the voice had retreated, the song had been sung, and that meant something inside Issa Thomas was still alive. Ahmed rushed into the house, nearly forgetting to lock the door behind him. Layla was in the kitchen preparing lentil soup, the aroma of garlic and cumin filling the small home. He walked in with the kind of energy she hadn't seen in months. Wide-eyed, glowing, his voice breathless. "Layla, you're not going to believe what happened." She turned, concerned. "Is everything okay?" He smiled, big, childlike, eyes glistening. "He spoke, Layla." She blinked. "What?" "Habibi, in the car, with passengers. He sang, like a full song, English, beautiful voice, clear as day, just like that." Layla dropped the wooden spoon into the pot, stunned. "He spoke?" Ahmed nodded, barely able to contain himself. "I felt like one of our kids just graduated or walked for the first time. Voila, it felt like that. Like he finally showed us a piece of his heart." She covered her mouth, tears building. "And then?" she asked softly. "Then, nothing. He went quiet again," Ahmed said, the smile fading just slightly. "But he looked at me, Layla, really looked at me, like someone who remembered something. Someone." Layla stepped forward and embraced her husband. They stood there for a moment, not saying much, just holding each other in the quiet of the kitchen. "He's coming back," she whispered. Ahmed nodded. "Inshallah," little by little. And in the other room, Habibi sat quietly by the window, looking out at the dark Jordanian sky. No words, no songs, just the sound of distant traffic and a single line echoing gently in his head. "Just the way you are." It was another long day of driving. Ahmed had picked up a pair of passengers from Beirut. Two men in their late 30s, stylish, talkative, and clearly from the music world. One had a guitar slung over his shoulder, the other carried a laptop case and wore tinted glasses, even in the shade. As they settled into the back seat, Ahmed greeted them with his usual warmth. "Welcome, welcome. Visiting or working?" "Bit of both," one of them replied in Arabic. "We're producers. Just finished a small music retreat. Heading to downtown. Maybe find something real out here." Ahmed chuckled. "Then you're in the right taxi. This one runs on stories." He pointed to the passenger seat. "This is my brother Habibi. He's quiet, but he listens better than most humans alive." The producers smiled politely. Ahmed turned the music on, this time not the American station. He picked a classic, a deep, emotional Fairuz song. Habaytak Bisayf, I Loved You in the Summer. The song filled the car, majestic, nostalgic, a hymn for lost love and remembered feelings. And then, softly, from the front seat, a voice. Not in English, but in Arabic. Habaytak Bisayf. The lyrics spilled out like they had never left him. Pure, gentle, hauntingly beautiful. The producers leaned forward in stunned silence. "Is that him?" one whispered. Ahmed didn't answer. He was too stunned to speak, eyes welling again with disbelief and pride. Habibi sang the whole verse, no stutter, no fear. His accent perfect, his emotion unmistakable. The producer with the guitar stared at him wide-eyed. Ya Allah, this man's voice, it's from another time. The other one nodded slowly. He's not just a good singer. He feels it, like the song lives inside him. As the song faded, Habibi stopped. He didn't turn around, didn't explain. He just looked out the window, like nothing had happened. But everyone in that taxi knew. Everything had changed. When they arrived at their stop, one of the producers leaned in and whispered to Ahmed, "If he ever wants to record, come find us. That voice needs to be heard." Ahmed nodded slowly. "Inshallah, when he's ready." As they drove away, Ahmed looked over. "Habibi," he said softly, "that song, where did you learn it?" Habibi didn't answer, but he smiled. And for the first time, Ahmed didn't need words. That evening, the taxi pulled into the driveway just before sunset. The air was warm, the city quiet. Ahmed stepped inside, a little slower than usual. Not out of weariness, but reverence, like he had just come from something sacred. Layla was in the kitchen, lighting the stove. He stood silently in the doorway, watching her for a moment. Then he said softly, "He sang." She turned, thoughtful. He sang again. She looked up from the pot, eyes wide, surprised. "English?" "No," Ahmed said, smiling slowly. "Arabic." Layla covered her mouth, disbelief. "No!" "Feiruz," he continued, stepping into the room. "Habaytak bisayf." From the front seat. Every word. Like he's known it his whole life. Layla's eyes filled. Softly, what happened? Ahmed pulled out a chair and sat down, still stunned. Two music producers from Beirut in the back seat. One of them had a guitar. I turned on the song, and Habibi just joined in, like it wasn't even strange. He shook his head, still amazed. They couldn't believe it. One of them said his voice didn't just sing the notes. It carried the whole feeling, like the song lived in him. Layla sat across from him, tears in her eyes. "And after?" she asked. "Nothing." He stopped, looked out the window like always. Layla smiled softly. "Whisper Subhanallah, he's slowly remembering who he is." Ahmed nodded. "I think the songs are unlocking him. Not just memories, but identity. And not the American side. The side he left behind." Layla reached across the table and took his hand. "Softly, what do we do next?" she asked. Ahmed looked toward the living room, where Habibi sat drawing slow lines on the condensation of the window glass. "We wait, we play music, we drive, we love him." He smiled. "And when he's ready, the world's going to hear his voice." That night after dinner, the house was still. The dishes were washed, the floors swept, and the city outside had finally gone quiet. Layla stood at the doorway to the living room, watching Habibi as he sat on the floor, gently flipping through an old Arabic magazine. He wasn't really reading, just tracing the photos, absorbing color and light like memories. She walked in slowly and sat near him. Close, but not too close, careful not to break the fragile trust they had built. Softly, "Ahmed told me you sang today," she said softly. No response. "I wish I had heard it." Layla smiled faintly. "He said your voice was like prayer, not just sound, but soul." Habibi blinked, but didn't look up. She reached for her phone and pulled up the song Habaytak Bisayf, the same Feiruz track from the taxi. The notes rose into the quiet room like incense. She let it play for a few seconds, then paused it. Gently she asked, "Would you sing for me?" Nothing. Just the hum of the fan and the quiet ticking of the kitchen clock. Layla nodded to herself and began to stand. But just as she rose, she heard it. Faint, almost breathless, singing softly, Habaytak Bisayf. Her heart skipped. She turned, and there he was, still facing the window, still sitting cross-legged, but singing. Soft, shy, fragile. like a candle flame in the wind. Layla sank to the floor again, hands over her mouth, tears falling freely, not just because the voice was beautiful, but because this was more than music. This was trust. This was healing. This was Issa, speaking not with words, but with the truth of his soul. When the song ended, he stopped, and silence returned. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was full of presence, of grace, of something sacred. Layla wiped her tears. Shukran, Habibi.
It was just another afternoon.
Ahmed had pulled up to a crowded cafe in downtown Amman. School had just let out. The streets were buzzing. A group of teens piled into the back of the cab, half shouting in a mix of Arabic and English. One of them, maybe 15, wore headphones around his neck and filmed everything with his phone. The ride, the snacks, the streets. Typical social media energy. "Amu! Uncle! Play something old school," he shouted from the back. Ahmed laughed. "You're lucky today. I've got something better." He glanced at Habibi in the passenger seat, gave a warm smile, and pressed play. Omar al-Abdalat, Adihaya. Hala wa hala. The beat dropped. Drums, claps, power. The cab came alive. And then, from the front seat, Habibi sang. Not soft this time, full energy, full fire. His voice cut through the cab like lightning. The teenager in the back froze. Ya Allah, what? His phone shot up instantly, recording wide-eyed. Another teen shouted over the beat, "Wallah, this guy's a singer. He has to be. No way this is random. Listen to that voice." The cab turned into a stage. Hands clapped to the beat. Voices cheered. And Habibi, silent all his life, roared through the song like it belonged to him. 2 minutes. Full verse. Every note, every shout. Perfect. As the song ended, he leaned back, calm again, eyes to the window, silent. But the phone didn't stop rolling. That night, the video was uploaded to TikTok with the caption, "Random taxi ride in Jordan. This voice?" Hashtag Jordan, hashtag Omar al-Abdalat, hashtag real music, hashtag who is he? 100,000 views by midnight, 1 million by morning. The comments exploded. "This is the real Jordanian sound. Goosebumps. I felt this in my chest. Pure power. Who is this man? He needs the world to hear him." Someone reposted it on X, then Instagram, then YouTube. And across the ocean, in California, a woman scrolled through her feed. She stopped. Her eyes widened. The phone slipped from her hand. She covered her mouth and screamed, "That's my son."